Okay, here we are on our third and last video for the CwC Farm project. In this video, we are going to be making it so that our animals automatically spawn at the top of our screen. Currently, we were relying on hitting the S key for this to spawn. That's what these three lines of code here for me, 21 through 23, do. But we're going to have it do it automatically. We're also going to be adding a collider so that our animals can know when they're being hit by the projectile, the pizza, the food, and finally make it so that they destroy when that occurs. So I think we should just jump straight into it. If you can, go ahead and open up your spawn manager script. That's what I have here. So let's think about how we want to do this. Basically, we're going to make it so that when the game starts, it should start spawning automatically. So that already tells you that we're going to be doing something in our start method. And we also want the animals to spawn at a regular rate. So we need to make it so that we can call this, instead of doing the S key, on a regular rate. Now we don't want to do it in the update, because the update will be calling it all the time, automatically. The only reason why we have this here is because we're saying if we press it at any point, that's why it's in the update, then do this. But now we just want to do it automatically. So what I want to do first is I'm going to make a new method. I'm going to make a new thing to hold this information, and then up here in the start method, we'll call it based on time. So line 25, I'm going to press return for me, and that puts me on line 26. So I need to be in between these two brackets, my one that goes for the entire script and the one that's outside of void update. I might even press return one more time to give me a little space. I'm going to type in void, because that's typically the beginning of any of these methods down here. And I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to call it capital S. This is not a variable name. This is the name of a method. So that's why it has a capital S at the beginning. Spawn random animal. Animal. There you go. And whenever you have a method name, if you look at line 11, you can see that it has brackets, parentheses at the end, because we can change the way this works. But I need to put some parentheses there. Now, the reason I'm getting a red line is because it doesn't need a semicolon. Methods don't have a semicolon at the end of their name. They have brackets because they need to do something. So I'm going to press return and open up two sets of brackets. There you go. So this method is going to be what spawns our stuff. So currently that's lines 21 to 23. So I'm going to take that. So I don't need anything else here. I just need these three lines. I'm going to copy, or actually I'm just going to cut. So on a Mac, that's Command X. I don't need those anymore. And for me, line 27, in between the brackets inside of the spawn random animal method, I am going to paste it. And there you go. Save that. So this will spawn our animals, but currently we are not calling it. I could just say in here, if I press the S key, spawn random animal, it would do exactly the same thing. But we're not going to be using this anymore. So for lines 19 through 22, I'm going to delete those. Don't need those. And out of habit, Command S. All right. So we're going to be calling this method when the game starts. The way that you call a method, and it does it repeatedly, so you can call this and have it do it on a timer, is doing something called, on my line 13, capital I, invoke repeating. Invoke repeating. So repeat and invoke or call a method. Now invoke repeating needs three things, and you can probably maybe see it on my screen. Let me see if I can get there really quick for you. Right there. It needs the name of the method, a string. String is another way for a name. We'll talk about that more later. So the name, when it starts, and then how often it repeats in seconds. So let's zoom back out. So the first thing is we want to put the name. Since it's a specific name that's spelled out like this, we want to put it inside quotation marks. So that is the first set, and I'm going to type in exactly what I have below. You can copy and paste if you want. It's just as easy just to do that. And then I need to close it with quotations. like that. Spawn random animal, and then I'm going to put a comma, because that's our first thing that we needed, was what are we doing? Now the next one is asking us, when do we start? And I'm going to say 2, after 2 seconds at the beginning. I'm sorry, that's our delay. And then finally, how often are we repeating? 1.5. And I don't want to get bogged down into this detail, but I need to put in an F. F means seconds. So 1.5 seconds. Now I don't have to do it here, but I don't really want to explain why that is, because there's different types of floats and like counts for times. But trust me, for that one we'll be fine. And I will explain it as we get further in. But for this first one, just use it as an example. So I finished it with a semicolon, and I'm going to save that for the time being. So what we should see is that after a few seconds, we'll see that it repeats continuously. So I'm going to go back, now that it's saved. I can see in my inspector, by the way, that it is saved. That's good. And press play. And what we should see is these come up randomly. I'm not pressing S on my keyboard. It's doing it on its own. Great. So this should drive you a little crazy, though, because you know that we should not be putting numbers down here inside of any methods, right? We want to try to keep all our numbers in a variable to make our code flexible, and then we can use our inspector. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press return, and let's make these public so that you can adjust them later on, have more control over how difficult the game is. So I'm going to make it public, and the first one, let's just make it an integer, because it's a whole number. Let's just do int, and let's go ahead and call it spawn delay. So this is how long it takes for it to spawn. I'm going to put in 2 as a set number for now. And we can change that in inspector, of course. And let's make the other one a public. Since it's a decimal, let's go with float. And we'll call this spawn, I don't know, spawn speed. That sounds good to me. Press right there. And then 1.5. And because it is concisely in seconds, let's go ahead and put an F here and put a semicolon. And now that we've done that, nothing's changed in our code. We just made our code, following good conventions to make it more flexible. I'm going to change that to spawn delay. There it is on my list. Make sure you get the right one if you're using the autocomplete function. Spawn speed right here. And that looks great. I will save this. Let's go back into Unity. Give it a second. I'm going to go look at my spawn manager, and I should now have the spawn delay. So I'm going to press play, and while it's playing, I can adjust these numbers, and I can get a sense of what's going on. So let's see what happens if I do spawn delay. See, nothing happens here because it is just kind of going its own normal speed. If we do spawn speed, should be slightly bigger gaps here. It isn't always concise, but that's working okay. So that is great. It does it automatically using this thing called invoke repeating. Please know what invoke repeating is. It needs the name of what we're invoking, how long before it starts, and then how often does it repeat this. And we put it in our start method because we want it to start when the game starts. We want the game to start from the very beginning. Okay, so now we need to make it so that whenever our animals hit the pizza, or the food, whatever food you have, that they will be destroyed. And the pizza as well. We don't want the pizza to continue moving. We're going to have both of them destroyed. So as soon as I say the word hit, that should make you think of one word in particular. A collider. A collider. Something that physically detects when two things hit each other. So we know, just based on that, we need to go back into our engine, go into your assets, go into your prefab, and let's take our first animal. Mine is a cow. When I click on it, I need to go into Open Prefab over here. And you'll notice that your scene changes. It'll give you a different view of your cow. For this, I'm going to go ahead and go add component. And let's add a box collider. So let me see if you can. There it is, a box collider. Not 2D, just normal box collider. And on this, it has a button that I really want you to be familiar with. Is trigger. So here's what is trigger does. Is trigger makes the collider not be detected by the physics engine. So it's not looking for things to bump into each other. It just basically says if anything comes, touches this or leaves this, then do something in a script. So look to a script. This is a trigger, and this causes something to happen in code, not in the physics of the world. Please, please, please know that what is trigger is. It causes the physics engine to ignore the collider, but the collider now becomes a trigger for something in a script. And we'll be looking at that in just a second. So right now my collider is on my cow, but you can't really see it too well. So what I'm going to do is hit this edit collider. And currently my collider size is much smaller compared to my cow for whatever reason. So I'm going to take this on the X. I'm going to make it bigger, see if that helps. You can see it right, like, it is so small right there. So you can stretch it out using these little tiny dots. They're just kind of hard to manage when it's so small. So it helps sometimes to go back into here and just make them bigger. That's like 20, and then 20, whatever. And you just kind of got to play with it. So I'm going to grab this dot, I'm going to drag it back. Now this doesn't have to be so concise. I'm going to hold down Option on my keyboard so I can just kind of rotate and get a sense. Oh yeah, I need to pick this up. Grab that bottom, move it up. Grab that top, move it up. It's a little bit wider than it probably needs to be. It doesn't have to be super narrow. We want it to probably be a little bit bigger than the cow because we're trying to. It's hard to hit everything. I mean, this is a fairly small looking game. But that's my first one. I want to add that to here. And I'm going to go ahead and add that to my other animals. I will probably speed up this part of the process, but make sure that you always click on your animal and then open prefab and then do the same thing. Okay, I just finished my last animal. I want to make sure that I have also applied a collider to my my food, wherever that tends to be. So open the prefab here, add component, add box collider, and that one should probably snap in pretty easily. We're going to do the same thing as trigger. Now the last thing I want to do with the food though is add one more component. We're going to do a rigid body. Now, the reason why we're doing a rigid body is because even though we're not using this to propel the object in the world, like push it, like we talk about, we are still using the transform, the transform.translate way of doing it. Having a rigid body on here is going to allow our detections to occur. So even though this has a box collider on it, the rigid body is going to allow the thing to actually hit the other collider. We don't have to get into the details of that, so don't stress about that. But I am going to add a component and just rigid body. And the one thing that's really important is to make sure you turn off use gravity. This needs to go. Boom. Because if it did, it would just fall downwards. If you remember, in our world, like we're on a flat plane, and so it would just fall down if we're using gravity on our pizza. But we don't want that. So, cool. That's great. Now we want to go ahead and make I think if we press play, let's go ahead and just play and see if anything's different here. Go to shoot. And nothing's happening yet. And remember, the reason why nothing's happening is because the collider on our animals, even though it is hitting the pizza, is looking for it doesn't do anything physical because it is a trigger, on trigger, right? So we need to make a script that'll say when it does hit, because it is hitting clearly, when it does hit, then do something else. So we're going to make a new script for that. I'm going to go here into Assets, Scripts, and I'm going to create a new C# script. And the name of that script is going to be capital D, detect, and collision, but I'm just going to do capital C and then lowercase OL. Tech col. I just put COL sometimes for collision, so I don't have to keep typing it out. I might misspell it. I always tend to miss an I or something in there. And I'm going to press return and save that. And now I will double click it to open it inside of Visual Studio, sorry. So this one's going to be a pretty easy script to do. I'm going to delete, I don't need my start method or my update method, because this is only going to happen when we hit something. So I'm going to delete those. And I'm going to create I'm going to start typing in void on capital T trigger enter. Make sure you get the one that is not 2D. And as soon as you press return, you're going to get all of these lines of code. And let me explain what it's doing. It's basically saying whenever something enters whatever this script is attached to, whatever object this is on, whenever someone enters its collider, if the collider is set to trigger, then do something here. So it's going to instantly find whatever this other object is. So whenever another object enters, it will trigger. There are 3 types of triggers. There's an on trigger enter. So if something comes in contact with something, which is very common for us to use, there's an on trigger stay. So if something is inside of your collider, and then on trigger exit. So if something leaves your collision. These are so useful. The on triggers are so useful. This is how you trigger cutscenes, sound effects. This is how you trigger a lot of your particle systems. When 2 things hits, you would say on trigger enter, and then you would make a particle effect occur. On trigger is the basis of most of what we're going to be doing programming wise. So I just want you to know there's 3 versions. When it enters, when it stays within the collider, and when it leaves the collider, whenever it leaves your area. For now, we're just going to be doing on trigger enter. Whenever this other object enters, then we want it to do something. Well, we want it to, if this is going to go on our animals, we will say, first, I want to destroy ourselves. Let's destroy our animals. So let's go game object. So destroy ourselves. And put a semicolon there. And I'm going to go back. I wonder if I want to do this dot game object. I don't know. Let's just do game object for now. So make sure that we're not using these animals in the hierarchy. We're using those that are in the prefabs, because this is the ones that are being referenced whenever they're being created. I'm going to go to my cal. Once again, I'm going to open this prefab, and I'm going to add component, and the name of our script was called detect COL collision. And let's go ahead and do this to our horse. Same thing. And our moose. And I just clicked to get back here. I like to see that. I'm going to press play, and let's see if that works. There you go. Killed it. Boom. But the pizza's still there. We don't want the pizza to stay. We want the pizza to go away as well. So let's go back to our script. And on after line 9, I'm going to press return. We're also going to say destroy. Now, we already have a name for the pizza, or whatever it's colliding with, right? Destroy other. So we're just going to say destroy other dot game object. So whenever something hits it, it automatically gives it a variable name of other, and then it will destroy it automatically. So if I hit save, back over, let's test it one more time. Press play, and it should destroy the pizza as well now. Boom. Look at that. Now we've got a game on our hands. So I think, other than one more step, I think we're done. The last step is I just want to get rid of these 3 animals inside of my hierarchy. I don't really need these at the beginning of the game. So I'm just going to click the first one, hold shift, click the last one. You can do however you want. Control, and I'm just going to delete those and save this. Now after this there will be a brief video about 3 challenges for this game. If you have some ideas of a challenge that you want to try, someone's thinking about the idea of like, well, what if you could choose different projectiles? Like what if you do an index where sometimes it shoots out chocolate, and if you hit a dog with chocolate, then the game is over. That's a little more complicated than we probably have time for, but there's like, think of how you can modify this game. Then in the challenge video you'll have some ideas, and from there we can finish the game off. I hope you enjoyed this project. This was a good one, and I can't wait for our next one.